Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Lost Story adventure, The Nightmare Fair, written by Graham Williams, the previous Doctor Who producer before John Nathan Turner, and this story is adapted by John Ainsworth. This was a story originally made for season 23 of Doctor Who, but a bit of a history lesson. Doctor Who at the time was struggling not only from behind the scenes with a lot of quarrels between how the show should be made between Eric Saywood and John Nathan Turner, but also the heads up, I can't remember his name, but the guy who owned the BBC at that time just really didn't like Doctor Who and wanted the show cancelled. And so, but also as well, we also have the fan base, which really struggled to get used to Colin Baker's Sixth Doctor after his controversial first appearance in the Twin Dilemma, in which he strangled his companions. And from that point forward, he had to basically climb. He basically had to get past first impressions, which is a very difficult thing for any actor to do, really. But anyway, because of it, the original plans for season 23 were scrapped as the producers basically they technically cancelled the show, but after a huge backlash on any sort of idea, they said they put it on I believe they said it's a 6-month hiatus. So season 23, the original plan was cancelled, and all of the money that was going to go to it was taxed off. And so what John Nathan Turner had to do was scrap the original plans and come up with a new idea for the next season, which had a lot less time and money put towards it. So yeah, and luckily for us, Big Finish has adapted most of the stories during this. In fact, this story, The Nightmare Fair, was their first story that they adapted in the Lost story range. This was the first story where they went, right, we're going to take a script which was going to be made for Doctor Who, and we're going to turn it into audio. So we actually finally got to hear this story. And in terms of the behind the scenes on this as well, is that originally the previous story, Revelations of the Daleks, was supposed to end with the Doctor promising Perry to go to Blackpool. This was because John Nathan Turner was more of a publicity person, and he wanted a story set in Blackpool, and so he came up with this idea of the Doctor and Perry going to Blackpool. But also as well, he also got a contract for Michael Gough to reprise his role as the Celestial Toymaker, a Doctor Who villain that hasn't been seen since the first Doctor era, only appearing in the Celestial Toy Room. So that would have been really cool. Sadly, Michael Gough didn't return for this story. We don't know why. Mainly, it might be because he was filming some Tim Burton films, or maybe he was due to ill health. I mean, just after this story was released, he sadly passed away. So here he's played by David Bailey, who does a pretty decent job trying to recreate his, but also doing his own kind of thing. Now, before I talk about the story, you've got the official Big Finish DVD cover, CD cover, sorry. There you go, that looks really cool. And obviously with these, I print out my own DVD covers. So this is one I got from a website which usually does replacement covers for television stories, but they've also done some for the unproduced stories. So this one, this cover is actually made with the unproduced story in mind, which is why we've got Michael Gough's incarnation of the Celestial Toymaker on the cover there. And we've got the spine, which is really cool. And we also got this back, which doesn't actually feature any of the special features on there. It came with the printing of it. But yeah, that's really cool. So there you go. So let's talk about the Nightmare Fair. The story starts with the Doctor and Perry actually visiting the Blackpool Tower and then going on some rides and enjoying their stay at Blackpool. And I really like the dynamic between Perry and the Doctor here. The Doctor has been a lot toned down in this. Whether that was the original intention in the original story or if it was toned down because Big Finish didn't have done a good job at basically redeeming the Sixth Doctor and they wanted to keep that style with this. I'm not too sure, but here their dynamic works really well as the Sixth Doctor and Perry, they basically debate about what's like the greatest place in the universe, and the Doctor's like, Blackpool is just perfect because it doesn't have a purpose. They try to recreate Blackpool on a different planet, but the problem is they made it with a purpose, which kind of defeats the whole object of it. And we have a really fun little debate here, and it's one of those scenes where I think if it was on TV, it might have been considered a little bit dull, but because we actually got it on audio, it actually surprisingly works very well. We also learn that the Celestial Toymaker, right off the bat, is spying on the Doctor and is watching his every move. And he's obsessed with playing a game, putting him in a game. And though he finds the situation at the moment pretty boring, he basically explains that the Doctor and Perry don't even know they're playing at this moment. And he also speaks to the Doctor, and the Doctor seems to hear him as he can hear somebody calling his name Doctor, and he's like, "What, Perry, what did you say? I didn't say anything. That's strange." And we get some really cool scenes in which of just the Doctor and Perry having a lot of fun, which sometimes is halted by the fact that you're listening to this instead of watching it. Like the scene in which they actually go on one of the rides and we basically hear about it, how amazing this ride is. It kind of feels like advertisement rather than an actual story, but I think maybe it would have worked a lot better if it was televised, if it was a TV story. So the Celestial Toymaker has an assistant, Stefan, this really strange guy who seems to be obsessed with just destroying the Celestial Toymaker's enemies, which kind of defeats the whole purpose. And so it's like the Toymaker's kind of like training him up to be like something like him. And also, because of the Celestial Toymaker's powers, he's basically made Stefan and his staff immortal. And what's been happening is that he lures the Doctor and Perry onto one of the rides. I believe it's called the Space ride, the Space Invasion or something like that. And they notice that somebody is following them. Somebody's following them, the Doctor and Perry. And so they originally try to go onto a ride, sensing that there's some sort of strange feeling as the Doctor keeps hearing this voice. And when Perry actually comes to this ride, she can also hear it as well, which is emphasising the danger. Now, because the way the lining is set up, the Doctor gets separated from Perry and gets in a different cart, whereas Perry gets into another cart with the guy who was following them. And the Doctor again gets caught up in a prison where he can hear someone tapping, and he tries to tap, and there's a really great moment in which the Doctor tries to communicate to him by using simple songs, but the other person doesn't seem to recognise them. And one of the songs he does, like the last song he does, is three blind mice, and the other person is just going boom, 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 boom. And the Doctor's like, great, my cellmate doesn't even know three blind mice. But I really liked that bit. And so really, for the majority of the story, the Doctor's been taken out of the action. And this story mainly then revolves around Peri as her and her stalker, the guy following her, who reveals that he's actually trying to investigate this place as he's been seeing a giant monster and a mandarin in the carnival after nights, and that his brother's gone missing and he's trying to find out what's happened to his brother. And the reason why he was following the Doctor and Peri, because he thought that they might have something to do with it, because they're dressed strange and they seem to be gravitating towards this particular ride. And so Peri and this guy, they break through and they go through the through all like the staff corridors and stuff, trying to find out what's going on. And now I know a lot of people don't seem to like this particular adventure because they don't think it's a strong outing for the Sixth Doctor. However, if you watch this, if you listen to this, as a Peri story, because this time the Doctor's captured and Peri's got to rescue him for the majority of the plot anyway, which kind of fails because of something that happens later on. The story actually really works very well as Peri learns to basically tackle this very dangerous situation and team up with this person who she might not trust, but and later on they get separated, and when they get reunited, this guy seems a bit off because previously he was injured by something, but now he's completely fine. And when they later see an android, this guy doesn't seem to be affected by it, which is strange for 1985. Because this should have been like something very bizarre, something very strange. But no, this guy kind of takes it normal, and Peri kind of feels like something is off. However, before she could do anything about it, she's also captured and she's also taken to the Doctor's cell. And it's here where the Doctor basically works out that, or at least finds out the Celestial Toymaker as he vanishes one of the cell walls to talk to the Doctor. And their arguments are a bit one note, because the majority of their dialogue is, "Doctor, please play the game. I will not play your games. Please, I will if you make sure that Peri is safe. She is. Prove it." And then, like, you know, we've seen this dynamic 100 times before. But what really works in this story is just the playfulness of the Celestial Toymaker. He's just enjoying the moment to try and spend time in eternity, just to wail away out of boredom. He's just doing this not because he's such an evil individual. I mean, he is an evil individual, but he's not really doing this because he's evil. He's doing this because he's just mainly bored out of wit's end. And the Doctor later meets a servant of the Celestial Toymaker, somebody who was who played a game of, I believe it was backgammon, about 100. I think he said 1778, which was like 200, 300 years ago. And this guy, he lost the game of backgammon to the Celestial Toymaker, and so he was cursed for not only being an immortal in a sense, but also he's cursed to basically serve the Celestial Toymaker as a subservient to, like, you know, do his dishes and take his plates around and stuff like that. And so the Doctor gets this really sad temperament as he listens to this guy's story, and he talks to his cellmate at the time, which is the boy that was following Peri. This is when he was captured and was replaced by one of the Celestial Toymaker's kind of duplicates. And the Doctor's kind of like, this is really sad. Poor lad, I hope he gets what he wants. And this guy later explains that he's in a final game with, he's got to play a final game of backgammon with Stefan, the Celestial Toymaker's servant. and he says he basically cannot lose, because if he wins his freedom and he can go wherever he wants. But if he loses, he will die, and he kind of wants to die because it would release him and he can finally have his freedom from life. So it's kind of really morbid, and it really does surprisingly fit with the rest of the story, as we have a celestial being who just wants to conquer everything and just wants to just wail away in eternity. So I personally think it's worked very well here. And later on, the Doctor discovers that on the other side of the cell, the person he was talking to was this giant beast monster thing. But later on, the Doctor works out it's a special race. I can't remember what they're called, but this race, they're basically like animals, but they got the mental capacity of animals, but they're also great engineers as well. They're a surprisingly strange adaptation of life in which, despite them having animal-like intelligence, they can basically make anything out of technology. You give them a little piece of technology and they can make whatever. As the Doctor describes it to Perry at one point, they can either make a sink or a washing machine or a massive spacecraft with any piece of technical junk, which is really cool. And the Doctor, and later on, the Celestial Toymaker basically breaks down the barrier, so all the cells are now just one big room. And the Doctor not only meets this giant beast, which turns out to be friendly, but he also meets this robot, which reminds me a lot of Douglas Adams, in my opinion. This kind of, he's a very posh talking robot who acts like he's got a personality and stuff, but he also is surprised that the Doctor and everyone else is sentient. And the Doctor even mentions that he is from a pan-galactic organisation. So that could be a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'm not quite sure, unless pan-galactic companies are a regular thing in sci-fi during the 70s and 80s. I'm not quite sure. You'll have to tell me. You'll have to tell me in the comments below. But anyway, this character then basically explains his backstory and how he got there. So this robot basically explains how he got there and what's his backstory, and it's pretty interesting and pretty good how it all plays out. And the Doctor basically promises the Celestial Toymaker that he'll play his games if only he has the reassurance that Perry is safe. So when Perry comes into the cell, they basically work out, the Doctor basically works something out because of the race he is. And now we get a really good scene in this where the Doctor basically explains the Celestial Toymaker, and Perry's like, who is he? And the Doctor's like, nobody knows, not even the Time Lords. They tried to work out who he was, but there was just so much of him that they got bored. They know he's telepathic and he's telekinetic, and they also know that he's lived for so long that he's been there almost since the dawn of time. They also know that he's basically indestructible. At one point, being seen using a supernova sun as a paddling pool, which that description just shows how powerful the Celestial Toymaker is. And the way Colin Baker performs it, in that he basically explains it as just like a matter of fact, as, oh, this is just something that all Time Lords know, basically, really emphasizes the malice, the amount of power that the Celestial Toymaker has. And it's one of those few occasions where you hear about it, but you don't actually see it. And it really works because it leaves a lot of it to the imagination of the audience. Like, if he can do that, what else can he do? And the Doctor still tries to work out what the hell he is. And he basically explains that nobody knows what he is. He's basically a creature that Time Lords basically tried to examine, but they basically got bored because there's just so much history with him that they gave up and let him roam around the universe, causing some sort of destruction and abducting people and putting them into his silly little games. And later on, the Doctor goes to the Celestial Toymaker, and the Toymaker basically explained that he came to Earth because Earth is so dependent on games. They've played games for life. They've had the humans have just had so much fascination with games. He even describes the moment during World War One where on Christmas Day people stopped fighting and started playing games. They started to just stop to enjoy themselves, and this is something that the Celestial Toymaker really admires about the human race, and that's a really cool sentiment. And what's really good is that that particular moment in history would become a future reference for Doctor Who in a much later story. So that's really interesting. And basically what's happened is that the Celestial Toymaker set up this arcade that he's designed, and in fact he gets one of his servants, Agamotto, I believe he calls him, Yasamoto, to play this game, and if he can beat the Celestial Toymaker's high score, then he can basically live, but if he doesn't, he dies. And apparently it's really hard. Now, this is one element of the story which I really wished that we had the visual description, the visuals for it, because this ending for an audio really doesn't work. And personally, I understand it because, you know, this is an adaptation of an unproduced TV story. So I do understand it, and personally for me, it doesn't really bother me, but I can understand why for a lot of people who want to get into an audio adventure might find this a bit difficult to get into, because the ending is basically the Sixth Doctor playing this game, and in the audio drama you just hear these sound effects like Pac-Man and Mario sound effects as you go you know, that kind of stuff, but we don't actually see anything because, you know, it's an audio drama, which I think does hinder it, because we as an audience don't know where the score is. We don't keep up with the contrast of the score. We do hear that the Doctor's character in the game loses points 2 times and has 3 lives. So if the Doctor doesn't make it in his last life, then he's doomed to basically be the Celestial Toymaker's servant. But if he doesn't, then he's free. And they're playing around with this kind of gobbledygook. Now, before the Doctor actually leaves his cell, he explains to Perry, he says to Perry that whatever you do, if you need me, just scream, which Perry doesn't really understand what's going on. The Doctor was trying to make the creature make a particular device for him to stop the Celestial Toymaker, and what happens is that this creature actually shreds apart the robot to try and make this weird helmet thing for Perry, and she doesn't understand what's going on, and nobody understands what to do, how it works. Is it broken? Does it even work? Who knows? So anyway, and when the Doctor's playing this game, it's getting really intense. He's like, you know, struggling. But he's also trying to reason with the Celestial Toymaker and talk him down and trying to understand him. And the Doctor's like, there's something strange about you. You're the only one here. There's no mate for you. You don't have anyone to play with. And then the Doctor basically works out that he is a creature from a completely different space and time from everybody, which is why in our universe he doesn't really have to worry about the laws of our reality, which is why he could live forever, why he is so immensely powerful. But the Doctor basically works out that he's just a very poor, lonely creature who just can't get back to his home world. And so the game is basically to distract him from his forever loneliness, which is kind of really... It does give you a little sadness for the Celestial Toymaker. And despite him being a villain, and a very conniving one at that, it still makes you feel really sad for him. And even the Doctor's is sympathetic towards the Celestial Toymaker, despite the fact that he is bound to lose this game. Now, back at Perry, she kind of gets semi-attacked by this creature, which makes her scream. And now this scream powers this machine in her head, which transfers all of the mental abilities on the Celestial Toymaker to create all of these projections, these walls and these characters and these monsters, to basically invert into the Celestial Toymaker's mind and get entrapped in a universe of his own making. So the Celestial Toymaker is basically trapped as the Doctor actually wins the game. Again, that bit is kind of hindered in the audio drama because we don't actually see it. And so the Doctor's basically forced to imprison the Celestial Toymaker. And there's a great bit where the Doctor's like, I despise putting any sort of creature, even the most wildest beast, in a cage. However, for you and your plans and your judgment on humanity, I'm afraid there's no other way. And when the seal happens and the Celestial Toymaker is trapped in his own mind dimension, the Doctor's really sympathetic, and he's like, I feel really bad for him that now he's basically stuck in eternity. And the Doctor even states to Perry, it's like, I know what that feels like to be, to live so long and to have nobody really to connect to really understand. He might have the Time Lords, but they're all hell-bent on just staying on Gallifrey and observing the universe rather than the Doctor wanting to explore it and have just a lot of fun. And so he kind of sees himself in the Celestial Toymaker. And the story ends with the man that was stalking him at the start finding his brother who was captured there. And the Doctor basically tells them, this game would make people a lot of money, you should sell this arcade. And when Perry starts heading up to the TARDIS, the Doctor's like, where you going? TARDIS is that way. Yes, but the fun fair is that way. And they laugh off and credits roll, and that's the Nightmare Fair. Overall, I think it's a really good story. I really enjoyed this. I like the dynamic between the Sixth Doctor and the Celestial Toymaker, though some bits are elements of the stories which you've heard 100 of times, but I think here it really does work. Story moves at a nice pace. We get introduced to some really nice, fun characters, but I don't think this story was well adapted for audio drama. A lot of scenes feel like they needed the visuals, or at least the way they're presented here, and I think some bits should have been changed. If we're talking purely on a critical level, I think a lot of scenes should have really changed to allow it for more audible presentation. However, if you're going into this story wanting a good representation of what the story might have been, then you won't be disappointed, as it seems really, really fitting for this era. I've stated before with some of the Fifth Doctor audios that some of the immersiveness of these audio dramas is hearing these actors try and sound as much as possible out of their original. Now, Nicola Bryant, you can kind of hear her age in her voice, but it's not distracting at all, and you do get used to it. Colin Baker, however, doesn't sound any different. you can easily imagine that right after Revelations of the Daleks, he got onto work on this. So, top praise to Colin Baker. He basically nails his a version of him from his past, and the dynamic between the Doctor and Perry is a lot more lighter in here, and I can't really think of any moments where the Doctor unjustifiably insults Perry. Here it always seems to be more, not justified, but more like banter. And there you go, that's the Nightmare Fair. So join me next time where the Doctor and Perry get reunited with some big giant lizard people and a corrupt little slug. So join me next time for Mission to Magnus. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!